to recognize who our God is and what He's saying. And so today we're in Matthew chapter 5 again. But I want you to put a finger in Matthew chapter 5 because we're going to Matthew chapter 19 first. But we're talking today, it's headed divorce. But I wanted to talk about the voice of disunity. And actually put out a disclaimer before we start. I'm very aware that in a room like this, there are many people who've gone through the trauma and the challenge and the difficulty and the pain of separation and divorce. There may even be some in this room today, and you're in the middle of a struggle. You're in the middle of a challenge. You're in the middle of a difficult time of relational, challenge. And although I know that God says in Malachi 2 that He hates divorce, He never says He hates the divorced. And again this morning we want to say the God of grace and the God of mercy is the same God who's for us and not against us. And again, He looks at each one of us in this room today and He says, I'm for you. My heart is inclined towards you. My Son has extended His arms in your direction. He's for you and not against you. And no matter what has gone on in all of our lives today, our God meets us just where we are today. Again, He makes His grace available for us this morning. Again, He makes His mercy available for us this morning. His love never fails, and it's available for you and for me today. And so we need to know as we start this morning that God is for us no matter where we're at in our circumstances, no matter where we're at in our situation. But I wanted to talk a little bit more this morning, not perhaps so much about the divorce issue, but about actually what gets us there. The voice of disunity. The voice of disunity that takes us not only to separation in our marital relationships, but actually can cost us in every relationship of which we're part. So let's read it together, because I believe that if we listen to the voice of disunity, it's a high price that needs to be paid. That high price, many I'm sure have had that voice of disunity either that you've listened to or has been listened to in a relationship in which you've been. And the outcome has been pain as friendships are broken, as generations are split apart, as families come apart. You know, even in churches, I've seen so many times that the voice of disunity, when listened to, halts the progress that God is planning. The voice of disunity, if listened to, actually destroys so quickly that which God took so slowly to build and steadily to build. The voice of disunity is a damaging and a destroying agent that you and I need to be aware. What is the voice of disunity? How can I recognize it? And how can we be men and women who don't get involved in either being the purveyors of the voice of disunity or listening to the voice of disunity? As we look inside our own relationships, whether they be husband and wife, whether it be mother and daughter, whether it be father and son, whether they be church community, whether they be in a business setting, whatever they be, sometimes the voice of disunity never starts just as the voice. But Jesus would say to you and to me, let's be aware of where that voice starts from. Let's be aware of all the component parts of the voice that is speaking to you and I, so that we might be aware and we might know what God is looking for you and I to do and to be. You see, if you are the voice of disunity always, builds from that place. And there are several things I think we can learn from this passage. It's not a passage just about married life. It's not just a passage for church life. It's a passage for all of our lives. I think there's principles in here that if we get a hold of them today, then our whole lives will be better, because we will not listen to the voice of disunity. It starts with this, that if your but is consistently louder than your and, then it's the first point that we need to be up and aware. If your but is consistently louder than your and, then that's the first we need to be aware of the voice of disunity. You see, in that statement it says, it is a fantastic land. It is full of milk and honey. And here, in fact, is the fruit. But there are problems. But there are giants. In your marriage, you can know what it's like. Yes, she's a great cook. She's a wonderful homemaker. She looks fantastic every day. But she's never out of her bed until 10:30 in the morning. He's a wonderful husband, and he's a great father, and he looks after the car. But he spends all the money. If your but is louder than your and, then watch out, because the voice of disunity is beginning to be formed within. If your but and whatever it is consistently louder than your and. You see, if they had said, this is a land flowing with milk and honey, and the people are powerful, but our God is able. If it is in your marriage, you say, he's a good husband and he looks after me, but he's never attentive to my needs, but my God is able and he will deal with it. If it is in your home setting, in your work setting, he's a great worker and he works very hard. And actually, he disappears at 4 o'clock on Friday early. God will take care of it. God is the one who give our difficulties over to and not hold on to the buts in our life, as it were, that we can get the buts being louder than our ands. And for these people, the but became louder than the and. You see, it starts there, but it also goes on and it says, they began complaining and spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land that they had explored. If you rehearse your problem more and more and more, then very quickly you're going to reverse. If you rehearse your problem more and more and more, then very quickly you're going to reverse your progress. And for the children of Israel, it was the truth that their voice of disunity began and grew as they continued to rehearse their negativity, rehearse the problem. As they gossiped, your gossip grows and breeds negativity. The rehearsal of your problem always slows your progress. If it is the case in your life, if you're about going telling your story to other people, going telling your negative to other people, I can guarantee you that the voice of disunity will rise and your progress will stop. And so we need to learn today that it's the voice of disunity as we're trying to listen and say it, and hear what God is saying. We've got to be those who say, I'm going to be an and person and not a but person. I'm going to be somebody who doesn't consistently and regularly rehearse my problem. He says here, he goes on and says to them, they spread a bad report and we saw the giant. We seemed like grasshoppers and they were giants. You see, if we maximize our problem and minimize our solutions, then the voice of disunity will quickly grow. If you and I are constantly repeating the negative experience, constantly repeating the problem, constantly enlarging the difficulty and minimizing the solution, then the voice of disunity will grow in our own hearts.